Hello, thinkers, builders, and game changers. Thank you for tuning in at X Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm your host, Miles. Welcome back to another enlightening episode where we'll dive deep into a topic that's often filed away in that we'll get to it eventually folder until a crisis hits. Yep, we're talking knowledge management. And it's not just about putting labels on filing cabinets or maybe naming your Dropbox folder sensibly. To help us unpack the real weight of knowledge, how it's retained, protected, shared, and yes, sometimes even deleted, we're joined by someone who knows how to manage more than just data. He manages capability, he manages competence, and he manages to do it all while raising global standards. We'll be with Ian Erskine, the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip, with a mission to unlock human potential by embedding knowledge systems that not only comply with global standards, but actually create a lasting impact. When he talks, we listen, because behind every sustainable business is a structure of wisdom that didn't happen by accident. So, here's the architect of continuous improvement himself, Ian Erskine. Hi!
Hi, Miles. Welcome once again, and apologies for my slightly croaky voice, but I've got a bit of a heavy cold at the moment, so I didn't actually come into the office this morning, so we're doing
Mhm.
that from my home office.
Oh,
But
I hope you get better soon.
no, that'll be fine. But this is a very important topic because, as I said, and as we all know, people are the drivers of all businesses
Mhm.
and people have knowledge. And a couple of things here will lead into the first question. But when we talk about the ISO 9001 standard, it actually forms the bedrock for all other standards.
Mm.
And that's where we do start to talk about knowledge. And it's a bit disappointing actually that other standards don't actually talk about knowledge, but that's why we concentrate. And when I'm talking to organisations in reference to what possible standards should they, and they often say to me, should we comply to? And I immediately say, well, in actual fact, the ISO standards aren't compliance standards, they're conforming standards. They're a set of non-regulatory requirements
Mhm.
and purely for organisations to embed into their existing systems to actually assist them to do things better, to
Yeah.
add value. Yeah.
Mm. Well, welcome back, Ian. Thank you so much for being here despite your husky voice. And I hope you really get well very, very soon. And we all know that this is not your first rodeo here, but every time you join, the bar of insight gets raised, or should I say, X-raised. Well, as you said, we're getting cerebral with knowledge management, the backbone of intelligent business. And let's help our viewers understand why this isn't just an ISO checkbox, Ian, but actually a strategic lever. And I want to get to the heart of it right away. Why is knowledge management such a critical requirement under ISO 9001:2015? And how does it shape an organization's performance in today's fast paced, information heavy world?
Well, as I said before, the 9001 quality standard literally forms the bedrock for all other standards. So we have the core standards are health and safety, environmental. They're the three: quality, health and safety, and environmental. They're the core standards. But in actual fact, and I still do certify many organisations that simply just have the one standard. And they do that purely because they want to have a simplistic system, and that system is based around the knowledge of their people. And that's where we drill down and have a look what the ISO quality standard talks about. It talks about the knowledge that is required, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in our interview, but to the extent necessary. And they say that purely because if they go into too much depth, it becomes something that becomes may well not be relevant to a lot of organisations. And also, I form the opinion, and I drive it a lot this way, is I'm glad they do that because, again, it demonstrates that it's a non-mandatory, it's just a set of guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
that you as a business must be able to develop your own criteria, your own processes, and your own guidelines to develop the knowledge of your people.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the important things a lot of people don't realise, and why it is so critical in today's ever-increasing, changing world, in reference to knowledge, people don't, as I said, people fail to understand that someone might come to work for an organisation, but they may have a different career path they want to take, right?
Yeah.
So at all times, an organisation must be up to the forefront of developing their people's knowledge so that if something comes up that better fits the person's career path, they need to be able to leave on good terms, right? And they need to be able to take the knowledge that they have gained from that business. They
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to take that to its business.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so critical to get knowledge right, store it, retain it. And if someone moves, we have to be in a position to delete that information because at the end of the day, when we talk about managing knowledge within a database, at
Mm-hmm.
any given time, there's always going to be someone, and in some respects, it annoys the living daylights out of me because there's always someone wanting to break into your system, spam you, delete your information, use it for ill-gotten gains and things like that. And we'll discuss that a little bit later again when we talk about the maintenance of knowledge, the retention of knowledge data,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to be able to archive and delete, right?
Uh-huh.
But we'll talk a bit more about that later.
Yeah. So maybe it's less knowledge is power. It's more like knowledge is performance insurance. Without structured knowledge, even the best intentions can spiral into guesswork and duct tape decisions. So ACI Global doesn't treat organizational knowledge like an administrative chore. It seems you've really embedded it, Ian. Can you walk us through how your organization applies it in practice and ensures critical knowledge is maintained and accessible to the extent necessary, as ISO beautifully phrases it?
Yes, so this is a point that we oftenly make when we're talking to different organisations. And I was actually talking to a young fella very early this morning, and his first question to me was, "Oh, I don't really think I have the knowledge required to do the course." So
Okay.
I've said, well, if you just refer to your CV, I think you've got relevant knowledge that you can bring to the table. Um, and we can convert that existing knowledge, converting is probably not the right word. We can leverage off that to take that to the next level, right? To
Mm-hmm.
give them the ability to broaden's the word I'm thinking of. So we can now broaden their knowledge.
Uh-huh.
But what we like to be able to do as a learning provider is
Mm-hmm.
to be able to take a person on that career journey. So if you're taking a person on that career journey, you have to be prepared to give them the tools. Above all, and you've heard me talk about this many times, we've got to be able to give them and sign off on their capability.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be able to demonstrate throughout delivering their tasks within an organisation, they have to be able to demonstrate that they can do that at the very best of their ability on an ongoing basis. Now, this is where we talk about the journey. Competence, capability, and merit is not something that is judged at a single point of time and then it's not touched at or looked at ever again. It's
Yeah.
an ongoing journey,
Mm-hmm.
as I mentioned before. the person's career path may change from different businesses and so forth. At any given time, an organisation should be, depending on their intensity, and again, that word to the extent of required, the business has to be able to check that. And that's where we talk about our ISO skills assessment. And we keep little, or the organisation keeps little video clips of those people doing their task. And we're just about to release one in reference to coffee making, a barista, right? At any given time, the barista on his daily basis, on his weekly basis, a monthly basis, he needs to be able to demonstrate to the cafe owner that he actually is ongoing. His competence is ongoing, moving forward. His capability is being checked. So that, as I said, that's where our ISO skills assessment checks in. And we feel it's going to be a very, very important additional add-on for any organisation, regardless of what they do, so that they can map the person's capability. And again, we've said this before, it determines a person's merit. Because the more competent, the more knowledgeable you are, the greater amount of income you should be able to, or be deemed to have returned to you because of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So competence, capability, and merit are all together married, and it's a continuous journey. And that phrase, to the extent necessary, Ian, might sound vague at first, but your approach makes it surgical. It's about balance, enough structure to ensure security and continuity, but not so much it chokes agility. I must say precision in practice, I mean, if you will. So let's stir the pot a bit, Ian. AI, friend, foe, frenemy, in an age where artificial intelligence can both supercharge and sabotage knowledge systems. How does ACI Global future proof against loss, misuse, or overexposure of institutional knowledge?
Well, this is something we've been grappling with now for well over nearly 12 months. And it's now coming to me quite clearly is that I don't think people have really stopped to think about where this is heading. And the problem I have when you talk about AI or machine learning, whatever you talk about, what I try to do is take it back to people themselves, take it back to the own person's knowledge. And the key question we need to ask, who owns that knowledge? Now, in a business or with us, our learning management system, where we're teaching people, employing people, taking them on that career journey, when they come on board, we make it quite plain, whatever knowledge they provide us is for the journey. It's not ACI Global's knowledge, it's the person themselves' knowledge. And that's why I am at loggerheads with the concept of when we talk about AI or machine learning or things like that, and wanting to put it all into one big database or databases all around the world. I go back to what I just said then. That data, that knowledge is people's property. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's not X-Ray, it's not ACI Global, it's not separate businesses, it's the person themselves. And it's a very key question that I pose to my clients is you have to understand that Joe or Freddie or Jill, they're on a career journey. They may not stay with you forever, but it's in your best interest to make sure they enjoy their time with you at the organisation, right? And you need to be prepared to provide them the relevant knowledge that you have developed on their behalf, right? You have to be prepared. That's transferable. That has to go with the people themselves. And again, that's the important thing where I think many people in this ongoing journey have missed the point. It is
Mhm.
not Microsoft, it's not Google's, it's no one else's property apart from ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And that's the key thing when we drill down and we talk about knowledge maintenance, knowledge retention, knowledge deletion,
Mhm.
archive, and the necessary protection that you must put in as an organisation to protect that personal knowledge. Because, and yet we've been scammed a few times, okay, or attempted scam and never got in. But I have spoken to people that have lost their licenses, their personal information,
Uh-huh.
and they literally break down in tears because what you have to realise that is their own knowledge that has been stolen.
Right. Mhm.
And that's my concern at the moment is um, this maniac push to drive everything towards AI. And that's the point which I think certainly has been missed. The understanding knowledge is core, knowledge is critical, but knowledge is people themselves ownership. They own that knowledge.
Mhm. And I agree with you, Ian. I think there are really a lot of people and organizations forget that protecting knowledge is just as important as acquiring it. I mean, it's not hoarding, it's actually safeguarding it. I like the way ACI framework pairs people, not just processes for that duality. And since you mentioned about competence, capability, merit, maturity, those are the wise pillars of knowledge management. Can you unpack how this affect not just knowledge retention and transfer, but also the often ignored practice of strategic deletion?
Yes, because basically what is happening in today's workplace, it's actually being turned upside down. Now, what you can see, and often I now challenge people when they're on public transport to just have a look around and see what people are actually doing. Now, it's probably just not isolated to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's a world phenomenon, is that people are constantly on their mobile devices, constantly. They walk up the street and if you don't get out of the way, you'll end up having a collision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I go back, and this is where we talk about capability, merit, competence to start with. It's that ongoing journey, but also an understanding that knowledge is very, very important. Knowledge is something that we can't just take or disregard as something that's owned by ourselves. And this is where I go back to when we have a real concern in reference to AI, is that there seems to be no concept in reference to how that knowledge is ever going to be returned if the person so desires. And I go back to what I think I said a couple of weeks ago. I come in on the metro and I can generally get on the middle carriage and I can look left and right, and virtually every single person is on their mobile devices. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming in last week, a young lady sat down beside me and I couldn't help but look to my left, and there was a well-known celebrity person that she had on her screen. I said, okay. Then
Mm-hmm.
I looked back again a few seconds later, and she was snipping that picture.
Okay.
Right, so she snipped the picture, okay, and then she went back, and I noted that there were three little things circling on her mobile, right, to Google. The video was on, and it was also being recorded. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, that's interesting. And anyway, she did a search, and a whole heap of different people popped up associated this with this one celebrity.
Uh-huh.
And then I really became very concerned because the next thing she was snipping, right? So on a mobile device, she had something like 10 different snippets of this person with different people, right? Now, what
Okay.
people don't realize is that knowledge is being captured. That
Mhm.
knowledge is going around the world and being stored in different databases. Now,
Mhm.
the question I have to the people that run Google and Microsoft and their other big databases is how are you ever going to be able to pinpoint where that knowledge is and return it to the
The
owner?
owner. Mhm.
Because that is what has to be legally done, and that's where we stand, and we can put our hand on our heart and say, not only are we certified, we
Mhm.
also make sure that we are compliant, and we don't talk about conformity because we have to comply, because it is a legal requirement of of any organisation within around the world. They have to, at any given time, if there's been a data spam or a data breach, right, they have to ensure that they can recover that information in a very quick and opportune time, so
Okay.
that that information doesn't land in the dark wide web.
Mhm.
And again, just um, finishing up on this point is that's why knowledge, its retention, maintenance, and possible deletion if the person requires, right? And that's the
Mhm.
other thing. Don't forget, as we said before, knowledge is not owned by ACI Global. It is owned by our own people coming in doing their courses. So at
Mhm.
any given time, we have to understand the request of the client for its return. They may say, no, just delete it, right?
Uh-huh.
And again, it makes good practice if you carry out this form of maintenance, right, and retention to do this, because as I said before, there's people always out there around the world trying to break into systems, and sometimes I wonder what these people get off in doing these things. What do they plan to gain? And in some
Mhm.
respects, I'll probably just answer my own question, because they make money out of it. And what a terrible thing to make money out of people's personal knowledge. I think that's disgraceful.
Right. I agree. And last one, Ian. For the CEOs, compliance officers, and team leads who are with us right now tuning in and maybe thinking, where do I even begin? What's your advice on embedding a resilient knowledge culture that meets compliance and delivers lasting value?
Well, this is coming really, really to the fore now. And as we said, people now, thankfully, are beginning to take a step back and consider, wow, this is a lot bigger than a lot of people realise.
Yeah.
What we're now saying, and actually encouraging people, we're encouraging them, rather than throw out their desktop boxes which sit on underneath their desks, right? Rather than throw those out, keep them, because that's where you can set up your own server, okay,
Mm-hmm.
your own hard drives. That's where you store all your organization's data, right? And it's not an expensive thing. It's a lot more expensive if your knowledge is hacked, because the consequences of that are enormous. And people say, oh, it's a lot of money and so forth. But I say the critical thing is you've allowed someone's knowledge to be hacked and then being used for ill-gotten gain. If that ever happens, you have to understand your moral, your ethical responsibilities in this. And there's laws. Every country has its own laws in reference to this. And you can't allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that option, Ian, is not just more practical, but would also be very sustainable for the organization. And if knowledge isn't alive in the culture, it's just another SOP gathering digital dust. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Ian, for grounding that so clearly. We really appreciate your precious time joining us in this episode and making complex topics feel not just digestible, but actually exciting. So thank you so much for your time, Ian.
Thank you so much again, and like I said, this is a critical issue, and probably in a couple of weeks' time, we'll probably revisit this very issue again because it
Yeah.
is moving very, very quickly.
hmm And again, it's not just about compliance, it's about building the right culture in the organization.
Yes, ethics.
Yes. Thank you,
Ethics
Ian.
is the key one.
I agree. Thank you. So, folks, I guess we're all reminded by Ian today that knowledge management is a living system that guides your people, protects your legacy, and drives long term value. If you want to embed these principles into your teams, reach out to Ian and his team at aciglobal.com.au, and don't forget to check out their full EOMS manual. So that's a wrap. If you're walking away feeling smarter and more curious, that's good for you. Thanks for staying with us, and we'll both see you in our next episode. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Rays.